Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my HOA claimed that my fence is illegal, then fined me for bogus reasons and tried to take away my house. However, I went to court and taught them an expensive lesson. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. And the first one starts like this. It turns out that even when you try and play into the annoying rules the HOA seems to have for no reason, they can still just screw you over because they feel like it. Like many people that belong to an HOA, I find it pretty useless and wish that it did not exist in my area in the first place. So when I wanted to build a fence in my backyard, I went through the annoying process of filling out a request with the HOA and then waiting. My backyard does not face another property and instead goes into an area with a ton of trees that is owned by the town and maintained by the HOA. I wanted a fenced-in yard so I could let the dogs go out there. It took months to get my request filled and get the notice saying that I could build a fence. I did not know exactly where to build it, so I hired an assessor to tell me where the property line was and I built my fence. That is where the story should end and would not really be a very exciting one. From the title though, you know that this is not what happened. A month later, I started getting notices in the mail about how my fence violated HOA guidelines. They did not tell me how or what was wrong, just started sending me fines in the mail daily. Multiple letters a day, fining me for the past days since I had installed the fence. I tried and got in contact with the HOA to find out exactly what the heck was wrong with my fence. I never heard back and the fines just kept coming in the mail. I did not know what to do and I could not afford to keep paying them. I was dumb enough that I was actually paying the fines when they first started rolling in. It was not until I got a letter giving me a court date saying that lack of payment or not showing up would result in the seizure of my house. I had to get a lawyer and fast because they did not give me much time before the actual court date. I told him that I had no idea why I was being fined and that I had tons of unanswered emails from them and I tried calling many times. Luckily my lawyer was able to contact their lawyer and I finally, after a few months of this, found out what they were trying to fine and now sue me for. My fence was apparently 3 inches over the property line. When I heard that, I thought it was some kind of sick joke. Are you kidding me? 3 inches and they were trying to charge me thousands of dollars and take my house away? I know I said it twice already, but 3 inches. For anybody reading this that does not use those kinds of measurements, that is less than 8 centimeters. Even my lawyer could not believe what he was hearing and I asked him if I would be able to keep my house if I could not afford the fines. He told me that this entire lawsuit was unethical and there was no way a judge would let them take away the house over this. He even encouraged me to countersue them back for all the money that I gave them in the fines. This guy was awesome and had me relax for the first time since this entire thing started. When we got to court, I was a little intimidated since I had never actually been there before and only seen things like it on TV. I just sat down and stayed quiet while my lawyer did most of the talking. Lawyer, Your Honor, this entire lawsuit is frivolous. The HOA trying to seize a house over a 3-inch encroachment is unnecessarily harsh. Judge, the file says that the landowner built a fence onto property that is the responsibility of the HOA. Are we really sitting here today over a matter of 3 inches? HOA, Your Honor, it does not matter if the encroachment is 3 inches or even 3 miles. The matter is that the fence is illegally placed and we were giving fines to the homeowner in accordance to the bylaws. Stating in those same bylaws, it claims that failure to pay them results in an attempted seizure of the property in question. I did not understand most of what was going on as the lawyers continued to talk about bylaws and quote things that were far too complicated for me to understand. I just knew that my lawyer had brought a ton of papers and said that they would be evidence. One of which was my property surveyor report showing where the line was and that I placed the fence where my knowledge of the property line was. Also, I brought the letters from the HOA that did not say why I was being fined, as well as the fact that they never answered me when I asked. It turns out that while the HOA rules did say that failure to pay fines meant the house could try and be taken, there was a bunch of other steps that they didn't do. The HOA was meant to do a home visit to speak to me directly regarding the fence. They were supposed to bring in another assessor that would show me where the fence was meant to go, a whole 3 inches. They were even meant to offer to work out some kind of payment schedule for the balance that I was owed in an attempt to relieve the burden. They of course did none of these things and instead took me to court to try and get me to pay $53,000 all at once or lose my house. The judge was not amused at having to deal with this. He even said that the lawyers should have worked this out on their own instead of having to let it get this far. Meanwhile, I was suing them back, wanting the money that I had paid in fines since their own process was not followed correctly. I was granted that and got the couple thousands that I had given them back. They also ended up owing the town money for breaking so many HOA guidelines within their own rules. My main question was what I was going to do about my fence. They could just start fining me properly and I would be right back where I started. Well, thankfully, my lawyer was awesome enough to find one more thing that put a stop to all of my problems. A local law that was so obscure it was pretty much never heard of. It basically said that any kind of structure designed to separate 2 properties was granted half a foot, 6 inches of leeway when building. It was probably not a known law because most people were not going to try to take somebody to court over the fence being over by just a few inches. As for the HOA, they faced a ton of backlash for trying to sue me and take away my house illegally. It got so bad that the head of the HOA actually stepped down from his position to try and relieve some of the problems. However, it did not really work and they kept getting put in local papers as going after homeowners for their own profit. They were too big of an HOA for the backlash to get rid of them, but it did change a lot. They seemed more scared to give out fines for small things because they didn't want to get in trouble with the courts again. I even think the HOA lawyer that we beat in court resigned from his position working with them. As for me, my fence looks great and my dogs love the extra space to run around freely. And yeah, ripe stars, who would have guessed that having a fence can be so dangerous in an HOA? Imagine losing your house over 3 inches of fence. That is just insane. Either way, let's continue with the next stories. Ex-employee returned to work and stabbed me. Now I am getting fired because of this. I work in a mostly typical office setting, and while I am not the head of the whole thing, I do have a management role. With the amount of work we have been getting going down, we had to make the tough decision to scale back a little bit and fire some people in the company. I was told I had to fire 5 guys from my sector. And I just want to make a point that I was not happy about having to do this. I would rather them hear it from the manager they know and talk to daily than someone from higher up they only know by name. It was on me to decide who though, and as a math and numbers kind of guy, I simply found the workers that had been doing the worst work at their jobs and sadly fired them. Great people, but it just had to be done as I was ordered, and since it was Wednesday, they had the option to stay until Friday for a full week of pay or cut their week short. A couple stayed till Friday, but the other 3, including the guy this story is about, did not do anything. On Monday though, ex-employee came into the building and I was a little surprised to see him. I thought that maybe he left a couple of things on his desk that he needed and just forgot about it with all the drama that happened. It's understandable, and the desks had not been touched because after a couple incidents we like to give them about a week to come and get anything they might have left before we go in with trash bags and such. Instead though, he came right up to me and just seemed to stand there. Me? Hey, name, was there something I could do for you? If you need a reference letter or something like we talked about Wednesday, I would be happy to send you one. Him?
No, I'm here to talk about you firing me for no reason.
Me? Do you want to come into my office? We can talk about it. I did not want him causing a scene on the floor. Him?
No, I want to talk about it right here, right now. I did nothing wrong, and anyone here can tell you that I did nothing wrong. Yet you fire me for no reason and expect me to just walk away.
Me? I know you are upset, but like I told you last week, the entire company had to cut some staff. You did not do anything to get fired. You just ended up being one of the people that got cut. Awesome employee. Hey name, why don't we go out for lunch or something? My treat. Him?
I don't need any lunch. I just need this idiot to get it through his head that he's not going to get away with firing me.
I did not actually see him pulling out the pocket knife, I just kind of realized after a few seconds that there was a knife sticking out of my stomach and I was bleeding. Yep, the ex-employee decided that the most logical thing was to stab the guy who fired him. Obviously, my natural instinct kicked in, and since he was still right up in my face, I just started swinging. I made contact with his head and face, and finally he fell down and I backed away from him in fear. The knife was still sticking out of me and I almost pulled it out before another employee told me that the best thing to do is actually leave it in until I get to the hospital. I was mostly in shock and only found out later that a few guys jumped up after I got stabbed and got the ex-employee pinned to the ground, until the police could arrive to take him away and get me to the hospital via an ambulance. I just remembered being in the hospital and being told that the knife was in a weird angle and they wanted to take it out via surgery. They could not actually tell from scans if it was going into an organ or not, luckily it wasn't, so they wanted to play it safe. I had to recover in the hospital for a few days, and during that time I was being flooded with emails from my employees asking if I was okay and telling me that they could handle everything until I was ready to come back. I do just want to say that they are an amazing bunch and made the time at the hospital as stress-free as possible. Also, the police came and got my statement and were given the knife that got taken out of me as evidence. I had the surgery on Monday, and because the site seemed to be a little infected because the knife was not exactly clean, they had me there until Thursday for IV antibiotics. Friday I got home and got a phone call from my boss, who was the main guy telling me to fire people at the start of this whole adventure. I had not heard from him, and what I was expecting was maybe well wishes or on the bad side of things telling me I was using up all my sick days and needed to get back to work soon. I was not expecting what I heard from him though. He told me not to come back and that HR reported to him that I violently attacked an ex-employee like an animal. I could not believe what he was saying, and I reminded him that it was self-defense and I was the one that got stabbed and put into the hospital for 4 days. He was firm though and said I was fired, and as soon as I was able to move around, I had to go to HR and sign my papers of termination. As of writing this, I still have not done that and instead contacted a lawyer because this had to be unlawful what he was doing. Unlike the people that work for me, I have a contract and can only get fired for a good reason. If I went and attacked someone unprovoked, I would understand, but I was in a moment of panic and wanted to get the guy off of me before he decided to pull out the knife and keep stabbing. I was told not to sign the papers, and instead I'm going to work with the lawyer to file a wrongful termination suit and see what happens from there. Even if I win and get offered my job back, I don't know if I will take it or just try to work somewhere else. I just wanted to tell this story even though it has no real conclusion, because the lawsuit is not the point. The point is that I was told to fire someone by my boss, and by doing so I nearly got killed in the process. And then he turns around and tries to fire me for it when really I did nothing wrong in the eyes of the company. I even used the exact lines that HR gave me when I first sat down to fire the 5 people. I got stabbed for this company that did not even seem to care about me as much as the people working below me. They all agreed to make official statements that I hit him after being stabbed in order to defend myself. I will see how it goes from here, and I will get a job where I don't get stabbed. And the final update to the story, out of fear of getting doxed here and because of some scary private messages I got, I won't go into too much detail, but basically the wrongful termination suit was successful and I won. The company had to pay me handsomely and I am much better off now with a better job at a different company. Thanks guys. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, have you ever had any work-related injuries? Let us know in the comments if you have any interesting stories to share about your own workplace. And the next one is titled Manager Malicious Compliance. I read all the malicious compliance stories about crappy managers with great interest. I will share my story, which is from the manager perspective. I will add in the obligatory "this did not happen today, but a few years ago." I was part of a security team for a large public building. Since the building had to be available to the public for more than 8 hours per day, we had 2 shifts. The early shift 6 AM to 2 PM and late shift 10 AM to 6 PM. I was the supervisor on the late shift. My staff consisted of me and 6 guards, including a guy I will call Jersey. The building closed at 5 PM, which meant no more people could come in, but the employees and public inside could finish their business and leave. At the end of the day, our job was to ensure the building was clear of people, lock all the appropriate interior doors, set the alarms, and leave at 6. Since it did not take 7 of us to complete this, I would allow all staff except 1 to leave about 5:15 or 5:30, and by then 90% of the people were gone. The daily designated staff member and I could handle the closing tasks. The staff would rotate who stayed with me each day, and the system worked out well for all involved. This meant everyone was getting off work 30 to 45 minutes early every day and getting paid for a full day. One morning though, about 9:30, we had a minor crisis in the building and I needed a staff member to handle it. I knew it would take most of the day, so I did not want one of the early shift guys to handle it, or it would incur overtime. 2 or 3 of my guys, including Jersey, were in the locker room getting ready to start their shift. I asked Jersey to grab his gear and go handle the issue. He looked at me and said, "You know, technically I ain't on the clock yet." I told him he was correct and to never mind. I grabbed a day shift person to handle the issue and the day progressed as normal. 5:15 rolls around and I wander into the locker room. I see my guys all getting ready to leave, including Jersey. I asked them where they were going. They told me which employee was staying with me and that he was still at his post. I glanced around the room and then locked eyes with Jersey and said, "You know, you're technically all still on the clock. Nobody leaves before 6. It was dead silent as I walked out of the locker room. I have no idea what was said to him in the locker room, but I bet it was not pretty. We all stayed late that day and no one said a word about it to me. However, the following morning, Jersey was in my office waiting for me when I arrived. He said,
"Hey boss, I'm sorry about yesterday morning. I was out of line. You won't hear that from me ever again. Whatever you need, I'm here."
We returned to normal operations after that and I had no trouble getting someone to step up on occasion. As a boss, I will do whatever I can to take care of my employees, but I expect a little flexibility from them in return. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, so far in my life, I've not been a huge fan of any of the bosses I ever worked for. Maybe that is the reason why I now became my own boss. However, if you have any interesting boss from hell stories to share, or manager from hell, whatever, then please feel free to share these stories either in the comments or on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled, "My Manager Blamed Me." The machine that takes in the bottles that have a deposit fee on them was broken. The machine could not scan the bottles, so the customers would not get their money back. A customer told me about it, so I told my manager, and he told me that I should take care of it because he was on break and the customers came to me. I told the customer that I could not help her and that she needed to come back some other time when it was fixed. My manager said that handling things in that way was also not acceptable. I started to get a little bit infuriated, so I decided to go back to work like I was supposed to do. Customers kept on coming to me with the same problem, so I went back to the manager who literally told me,
"You're at work. Customers complain to you. It's your problem."
I told my coworkers about it. They told me that it has happened before and that a mechanic was required to fix the problem. My manager got angry at me because I told him this. He told me that I needed to find a solution to the problem or I would get fired. I started thinking what I could do to fix it, but I could not figure it out. Since I work at a grocery store as a 17-year-old who has never fixed something like this before. Then my stubborn side took over, so I decided to fix the problem my way. I took a broom and punched a hole in the seal that keeps the bottles from falling down. Then I put a big plastic bag on the other side of the machine for the bottles to fall into. My manager lost it and told me I need to fix it in a better way right now. So I put the plastic bag in his hands and told the 12 customers that were waiting for the machine to work to give their bottles to my manager and he would take care of it. The The manager then sent me home as he was raging and yelling at everyone. The next day I had to work again and the mechanic was there to fix it. He told me that I had made the situation with the machine worse, but that he had to laugh when he heard the story about my manager. I then heard that my manager got fired by his boss for losing his cool and that I handled the situation very well. To this day, I still wonder what story was told to the boss, but I still have my job and the manager is long gone. The next one is titled, "The New Store Manager is Me." So this happened some years ago. I had gotten a job working as a stock person loading the shelves for a crafts store. The hours were unholy, 3 AM to 9 AM. It took quite a bit of getting used to, and because the hours were evil, the pickings for such shifts were understandably slim. So it should be no surprise that the manager was the rotten scrapings at the bottom of a very dilapidated barrel. The store had this training system in-house on a computer where you got an account, read what amounted to slideshow notes on safety, about not setting yourself on fire, and a quick overall cliff notes about OSHA saying not to twist your back while lifting. Now see, that's what the average employee read, and even the slowest reader could zip through in 15 to 20 minutes or so. But that is not what my training manager gave me. She pulled up a training module, did not check that it was accurate, and walked away, telling me to read it so I could get to work. The very first line of a massive training module said, "As the new store manager, you must know and understand the laws you must follow." Me, hang on. So I called over the walkie-talkie. Me, training manager, I think you gave me the wrong training manager. OP, I gave you the same training module that I gave everyone else. Me, training manager, I really think you should double check. Training manager now snapping, "Stop making excuses and get to it." Malicious compliance time. Now let me try to help you envision this monstrosity before me. Imagine a phone book scanned into the computer, divided into over 100 sections. Every subsection had between 5 and 20 sub-subsections. Every single sub-subsection was 20 pages long, in size 10 font, single-spaced. Details involved laws covering all those delightful little things like discriminatory practices in hiring and managing employees, sexual harassment, and all the ways a store manager could get themselves and the business sued by all and sundry, and how to avoid this fate at all costs. Or at least, that is how far I managed to read before my malicious compliance ended. There was still a lot left to read. Half an hour in, the training manager kicked me off and had me help shelves, berating me for taking so much time. I again told her that I had the wrong module, and again she told me to shut up and stop making excuses. She then went to the computer and closed my module, clearly without even acknowledging the gigantic screen of text instead of the neat little slideshow with pictures and big letters for 5-year-olds to read. Malicious compliance again. I tried twice and she was not listening. That was all I owed her. A month into my employment and training, I still had not completed reading the phone book, having been given only 30 minutes each day. Finally, the store manager, the actual store manager, came to see why I was incapable of completing a module that should have only taken me 15 minutes and that I really needed to improve my reading skills. Me, store manager, I can read just fine, but as the new store manager who will be taking over for you, I really must insist on reading the entire module. Store manager, I'm sorry? Me, training manager, told me to read the store manager training module, and I need actual time to get through it. If I'm not the store manager, then I need to be given the correct module. Store manager, did you tell her that she had given you the wrong one? Me, yes, and I quote, and here I pitched my voice to imitate her angry snapping voice. I gave you the same training module that I gave everyone else. Stop making excuses and get to it. Back to normal voice, I told her twice and she just wouldn't listen. The store manager went very quiet. He silently took me into the break room, got me on the training computer there, and removed the store manager module from my account and put the regular employee module up. I zoomed through that bad boy in less than 10 minutes and got on with my work. The store manager and training manager disappeared for a very long time. Epilogue. Sadly, the training manager did not improve her behavior in the following year of my employment at that company. She remained exactly as toxic, incompetent, and a workplace bully right up until I reported her to the hotline with 6 typed up pages of documentation. The regional manager had to come in and put the fear of God and Satan into her before she got very quiet for my remaining few months of employment before I moved out of state. So someone was meowing very loudly just now when I was recording, because someone was lonely and needed attention. Shame Disney. Someone needed a lot of attention. Cannot be alone here. I'm not sure if you can hear it, the purring. She's very happy to be in my room. Disney. Yeah guys, let me know in the comments if you have any cats. Let me know which one you got and for how long. She, by the way, if you're wondering, Disney right now is 4 or 4.5 months old, so she's still very young, but I can tell she's getting bigger. She really enjoys the food that we are giving her, and yeah, I can definitely tell she's getting heavier when I carry her. Let's see at what kind of weight she tops out in maybe a year or so, or in a few months. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the extra Disney footage. Here's some purring. Okay, and I see you again later today. Thank you so much for watching, guys.